Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Rachel Jones, and I am a sales coach that helps solo entrepreneurs and startups that are trying to get some more sales revenue in the door. And I'm really excited today to have Coach Temple with us. Can you give us a little bit of who you are, what you do?
Well, first of all, Rachel, thank you so much for having me today. I feel very honored. In terms of what I do as a transformational coach, specifically in the leadership realm, it is not uncommon for leaders to be in a position to where they really want to up their leadership game and be the best leader possible, so that when they have the presence that they want as a leader, they're able to attract the best out of themselves as well as others. And so that's essentially what I do as a leadership coach. I support leaders in doing an introspective dive within themselves to actually become better leaders. And as a result, their communication improves, their business functions improve, employees are actually excited about going to work. So you end up having a reduction in employee turnover and costs associated with that. And ultimately, they're able to meet whatever organizational goals they have with more clarity, focus, ease, and grace.
I love that. I think we've all been in a space where we've had a boss or a leader that we didn't necessarily jive with. But I think to their credit, a lot of times there's not an educational process as you step into a leadership role on how to create that culture with your employees. How do you continue to lead? And it is a little bit like patting your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time, and you're learning on the fly. I'm curious, I know you came from a background of some educational and advocacy. What made you want to transition into helping people into the leadership roles?
Well, you hit the hammer on the nail. Essentially, I had a job that I loved, and I had no plans of leaving that particular job. I was going to retire. And a long story short, I got a new supervisor, and the power of one is real. And this particular person had issues with people of color. So it wasn't just me, there were other people that were also involved. And so after going through that for 5 years, I've realized, okay, either I'm going to continue to be stressed out or make some changes. So I decided to leave. And the outcome of that is, as I said, am I really going to allow this situation to define who I am and my situation? Or am I actually going to be a part of becoming with a really good resolution to people in this situation? Because it's not uncommon for leaders to be in a spot where, for whatever reason, they're having an interpersonal issue with someone. Then how do they get through that? Through finding their own answers and what is authentic to them. So that's literally what got me into the space of coaching, which was my experience with a leader that was not necessarily the best. He may have been good at what he did, but in terms of interpersonal skills, he could have used some additional support. And just to say something, you really said something really strong earlier about when leaders have difficult times with people. You can take a communication training all day and learn the technical skills. But what's going to make the difference is how you show up in the space. Is your energy in a good place so that when you say whatever you're saying is actually received and received well? Those kinds of things, in terms of how you're showing up in your energy and attracting, that is what comes out of what you do in coaching. No training is going to teach you that, but coaching will support that.
And I don't think any training can prepare you for the reality of being a leader, because there's so many times that something pops up that you have never heard. It wasn't in your training course. And so you have to take that to, other leaders or other professionals to say, how on earth will I handle this? And get different ideas on how to approach it from a place of empathy or being firm or however you need to handle that. It is not a innate skill a lot of the times. It is a learned skill. And so I appreciate that you took a bad situation and decided to become the solution. Instead, a lot of people could become bitter with that and just say, oh, that was just a terrible person. So I think that speaks a lot to your character, that you want to change that narrative for other leaders.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. So many things of what you said is very true. Because as a leader, you're not sure. You may know what is on your to-do list, but you may walk in the next morning and all of a sudden something new has happened, and figuring out how to still get your to-do list done while handling this new thing that's happened in your situation, that's real. And coaching really helps you be able to prioritize, and not prioritize in terms of what do I need to do first, but really be able to focus on what's most important and not lose your mind in the process, because it's not uncommon to say, oh my goodness, I have all this to do. I feel overwhelmed. Well, what are some things that you can do so that you're not overwhelmed in that situation? And coaching can really support you in that.
It's interesting you say overwhelmed, because I literally made a post last week on, it was trying to be vulnerable for a little bit, because I was in a space about a year ago that I was just overwhelmed, and I wasn't setting very good boundaries, and I wasn't delegating very well. And sometimes when you're in that mode of just like, okay, I just have a ton of work to do, I think that's how people get burned out. And having somebody that you can talk through about, how do I best set boundaries, or talk to my boss on, I have too much on my plate, so you need to give me what priorities you have, and said, because I'm not going to work on this at home later. I'm going to work on it throughout the hours that I have promised to give you. But I think a lot of people just keep taking on more and more and more work, and then working on it in their personal time. So is boundaries something that you are working with a lot of leaders with?
Yes. And in that situation, the question will be, what concerns you the most about taking on these additional responsibilities? The answer for each person is going to be different. And so when you're working with a transformational coach, we're trained to be able to listen to what you're saying, to be able to see the energy that you have behind certain words, and to ask you to go deeper into that. Because what's going on is that there's an experience that you're having, and bringing that subconscious experience, making that a conscious thing for you to know, because then you'll understand, oh, this is why I'm experiencing this internal block as it relates to this. And so now that I know that, I know how to move forward with more ease and grace. And now I have more clarity. So that will support you in understanding, okay, yes, when this happens, this is important for me to take on. And then it will also support you with, okay, yes, this has happened, and I don't necessarily need to take this on.
What are some of the common, for me, it was boundaries and delegating, but what are some of the common issues that you see people struggling with when they come to you for leadership coaching?
That's a good question. A good amount of leaders actually struggle in balancing what they do with their career and what they do in their regular life. And even though the two overlap, because your career is a part of your life, but understanding where there is the balance, that is not uncommon. I've literally had people come to me just to say, you know what, I just want you to support me on just being able to take a vacation. So essentially, these are workaholics who've gotten so into this space that they have difficulty just putting fun on their calendar. And it's a joy to support them in that, because guess what? When you are in a space where you're actually enjoying more of your life, and you're identifying your purpose and why you're doing what you're doing, then that helps balance out the other things that you're doing in life. The other thing that I found that I've helped a lot of people with is, why are you doing this? And what about this is important to you? A lot of people say, oh, well, I'm here to help other people. That's whack. There is something about this situation that is in it for you. What is that? Because that's really what's your motivation and your driver in terms of why you're involved. Another thing that I see with a lot of the people that I support is when they do have issues with a colleague or a coworker, or a frustration arises. Why am I in this quote unquote rut? Whenever this person starts talking, I start to feel a certain type of way. This happens to me all the time, and I just don't get it. Let's talk about why you're in this rut and what is it, because at the end of the day, you really want relief from that, and that is possible.
One of the things you first said is, why are you, what are you wanting to get out of this? And it brought me back to people that talk about end of life, right? And when you go to somebody at the end of their life and you ask what they wish that they had done differently or better, it's never, oh, I really wish that I had done that reporting better, or nobody's going to look back at your life and say, wow, were such a great worker. It's going to be about those vacations or those personal connections. And I think that that's the part that people don't realize when they're in like just the heyday of every day, just rushing, trying to get it done, trying to manage their life or kids or anything else. And I think it's really important to think about. Now, what type of coaching methods do you?
I will agree.
What coaching methods would you go at for people that have those type of problems? Is there a particular style that you like, or?
Well, I come from the ontological space, which is the study of being, because we are human beings. Mm-hmm. And so because you're human beings, the question is essentially, what do you be at this moment? What are you being? What is your purpose in this moment? And another word we use for purpose is life intention. What is your life intention at this moment? And how are you fulfilling your purpose or your life intention through what you are doing at this moment? And all of this is important because it helps you understand what is important to you. Also, in that space, I do an activity called Standards of Integrity. And that is important to people in leadership roles because the question becomes, how do you define yourself as a leader? Mm-hmm. If I asked you to describe yourself, what would you say? And say it without any hesitation, based on what you really think, not what other people have told you. And then as a leader, when you're in situations and you really are having to make a serious decision, how can you make decision-making easier based on the values that are important to you as a leader? Mm-hmm. And so those are some of the tools and techniques that I use, in addition to other things that can really, another one that's coming to me, when you're in a situation and you're really wanting to bring something into fruition and you're experiencing difficulty bringing it into fruition, and people are having these internal conversations about, oh, this is going to be hard, it's going to be a struggle, and it really saps away your motivation. In that moment, you're experiencing two things: monkey mind and a moment of mastery. Mm-hmm. So I help you understand how your brain actually operates when you're doing something new. And then the 20 different monkey mind symptoms that you can be experiencing that is contributing to you having a mental block. And so ultimately, the outcome is that I really support people in being able to train their brain to do those awesome and wonderful things that they really are excited about doing.
That's great. When I've talked to quite a few people that have worked with life coaches or worked with therapy, and I feel like the difference that I have been able to assess is that therapy is really dealing from things with your past and emotions and kind of getting to a solid ground. And then when you work with coaches, it's really about a growth moment in your life and you have something that you want to like obtain in your life or learn about how to do better. Is that roughly what you think as well when it comes to the difference between the two, or how would you describe it?
I can't say it any better, period.
Well, perfect. Now, when you are looking, who typically works with you? I know you said leaders, so is it a lot of like women in leadership? Are they in particular industries? Who typically finds you and decides to work with you?
My typical climate are female leaders. It does not matter the industry that you're in. I have supported people that are vice president of banks, people who are high directors within their within an insurance company. I've supported women who are pastors of churches. I have supported other women who are entrepreneurs or solo entrepreneurs. So in the end, if you're in a leadership space, that is who I support. And all of these women had a particular goal that they were really excited about, but was experiencing difficulty in bringing it into fruition. So they had a partner, which was me, to support them in understanding what's going on in their brain and how can they bring this goal into fruition with more clarity, focus, ease, and grace. I've even worked with, I have worked with men, and one of the men that I worked with was a 10-year professor, and he wanted to transition within his career, but he was having a difficult time deciding where he wanted to go with his career. And so I supported him because if you're in transition, and you're really, really a high achiever, you really want to get the answer to where do I want to go? And
Right.
so ultimately, with all of these people, they were able to find their own answer. And the other piece I'll add is that usually there are two different kinds of coaches. There's a technical coach and then the transformational coach. The technical coach is usually specific to a field. They're an expert in that field, so they can give you advice in that space as well as guide you. As a transformational coach, I am an expert with the brain and how the brain operates and how you can train it to work in your favor. And so I support you in actually coming to your best answers and excuse me, and you getting to the answer to your own solution, because ultimately, once you get that clarity that I support you in getting, I don't have to tell you the answer because it will present itself to you.
That's really powerful because I think a lot of people don't realize that using a coach or a therapist is really talking to yourself in a more in-depth way that you have to be prepared for. I think if you're not prepared for, you kind of shut down when you're getting to these revelations. And when you strike on one of those revelations, it's really having somebody else just outside view. So you're not just in your own brain having your own story. It's somebody that can kind of cut through that and say, why is it that you think that exact way? Explain it to me. And then when you get the words out, it's sometimes you have a different perspective once you've been able to bounce that back and forth a few times.
Well, what I'll say is that as a coach, a therapist will help you heal what's happened in the past, right? So they're with the, well, why did this happen? Why do you feel that way? And all the kind of stuff, right? And that's important. I have a therapist myself. As a coach, and I also have a coach too, the coach is really here to help me understand what is it about my life that when I literally pass away, I can look back and say, I did all these things and I lived the most fulfilling life that I wanted to live. What am I doing to live a fulfilling life? How am I establishing myself and my purpose? And so, as a coach, I'm literally a reflection of you. So, a therapist may be here to do some diagnosis and things of that nature. I'm not here to do that. I think
Yeah.
you're perfectly perfect where you are. You're human. So, we're working and operating from that space.
Now, do you typically find the folks that you're working with are like people entering their leadership journey? So somebody who's just stepping into maybe middle management, or are they people who have kind of gone through some of it, have learned a little bit, and now are jumping up into a higher role, maybe leading as a director or a VP? Is it the gamut?
That's a good question. For whatever reason, what's been happening lately is that it's been people who have been in leadership roles for, 10, 20 years. Can coaching support people that are new in leadership? Absolutely. One of the things that really makes coaching stand out from the crowd in terms of people who have been in leadership for a while is after a while, you've taken all the trainings that there are to take. You've done all the assessments that there are to take. So you have these assessments, you have all this training, and then the question still becomes, why am I experiencing difficulty in accomplishing this thing and having this positive working relationship with someone? Why do I still continue to get in the same rut? That is where coaching can really support them, because they didn't have anybody really help them uncover that unconscious block so that they can move forward with more clarity, focus, ease, and grace. None of the trainings that I attended when I was in that space, because I used to do leadership development, none of the trainings that we had supported me in learning more about me in terms of how I define me. And there's nothing wrong with assessments. They give you greater insight, but it's much more powerful when you are able to define yourself in terms of how you see yourself.
So as somebody's coming in to work with you, what does that look like? Is there normally an assessment up front and then you guys have an ongoing like weekly conversation? What does that look like?
So what I first recommend is let's have a discovery conversation. Let's talk about what it is that you really want to accomplish and what about this is fulfilling to your life. And then after we have that conversation, we will, in that conversation, it'll also be some coaching that'll take place so that you can see what it's like and how you literally feel as a result of it. And the overwhelming majority of people, after they experience it, they are hooked, they're interested, and then they move forward. And so I ask you if you're interested in moving forward. And then if so, then we'll talk about what it looks like and other things associated with putting it into action.
Mm-hmm. And I know that you very graciously offered that if there's any viewers that want to take that initial assessment with you, we're going to link it below so that they can access and have that first conversation to get to know you a little bit more and your methods. So that'll be really exciting. And I think a lot of people will find a lot of value from that. Can you share like a success story or a transformational story of somebody that you've worked with and how that has impacted their life or changed their life in a way that's been really positive?
Absolutely. So there was a woman that she was my client for a year, and she was a pastor of a church. And when she came to me, in her what do you call it? Middle age. She's a middle-aged woman, so she's not considered young, but she's also not in the retirement space either. So she's middle-aged. And it was literally at a point to where she's like, I don't know who I am anymore. I have my kids, I have my husband, I have my job, I also have this church. I have lost myself.
Mm-hmm.
I really want help finding who I am. That was initially what she came in for. So out of that, we talked about it. And I said, okay, what would be a small, sweet step to you really saying, yes, this is something that's important to me, and I've accomplished this within 6 months, right? Because usually when I work with people, it's for about 6 months. And so out of that, she said, you know what? I just want to take a vacation. Mm-hmm. That's all I want to do. I want to get to know myself. So from there, we met, and she ended up taking her vacation. And in that process, it was so much easier for her just to be able to relax and enjoy more of life, of what life had to offer, because in the process, she was learning more about herself, what is really important to her, and being able to uncover internal blocks as to why it was important to her to literally work around the clock. And so when we get to the outcome of this, what happened with her? I worked with her for a year. Not only did she take a vacation, the relationship with her husband improved. The relationship with her children improved. Mm-hmm. With the church that before I talk about the church, let me talk about what she at her school. Someone at her school that she did not necessarily, they had a decent enough relationship, but they didn't care too much for each other. Mm-hmm. This person came up to her and said, you know what? I don't know what you're doing, but whatever it is looking really good on you. Mm-hmm. So that's for amazing. Someone who didn't, who didn't like it, I would say, yeah, in a couple of months of working with her, mm-hmm. Wow, I can see you are a new person.
Yeah.
And then from there, ultimately, with the church that she was leading, when I first started working with her, they had this event, a community event. It may have pulled maybe 100, no more than 200 people. After working with her, not only are her parishioners much more engaged in the church, people have stepped up to help out where they normally have not. The people who have disagreed with her because when she first got there, they were not happy about her. Now they're in a place to where they're like, we want more of your leadership. And with this event that they have coming up after working with her for a year, this is their third time doing it. And now they have sponsors in addition to over 2,000 people that they plan on attending this event.
That's so amazing.
That's a really good example in terms of a recent success story, in terms of how transformational coaching really supported her.
I feel like as women, a lot of times we are in caretaker roles, and it's not saying that men don't, but to focus on women, I used to have a childcare agency back in my previous lifetime. And one of the things I would come in as I worked with new moms, and I would say my advice from a non-parent, non-married person is, yes, there is a time that you're going to have to be focused on your kids, but you need to make sure that you're prioritizing going back out and seeing your friends, because your kids learn how to make friendships because you show by example. You need to make time to see your spouse because that's how they learn how to have good emotional relationships. And then you need to make time for yourself because that's how they become individuals. But I think what happens a lot of the time, and I'm guilty of it, is we're so busy trying to take care of everybody else that we do lose ourselves until we hit that moment of burnout or middle age crisis or whatever it might be. And then we have to kind of reconstruct it a little bit to make sure that we have better boundaries as we are caring for everybody else, because that does nothing but break, generational expectations and allows our future kids and to be better equipped to be able to step into a space with boundaries.
I will say this, of the women that I've worked with, we may be working on a particular goal, but to be more transparent, most of these women are middle-aged women, and those things that they used to do, they no longer do because they feel, for whatever reason, that they're not in that place and space to be able to do it anymore. And they've gotten caught up in what's going on with life. And that's where I've really been able to help them get that breakthrough to what is the subconscious thing that you're actually believing in this moment that's prohibiting you from really doing those things to really enjoy what you used to do. So back to the pastor that I was talking about, she used to do a lot of writing, but she stopped writing. But now that she's in a different place and space and understand it's okay to delegate, and she's trained other people up to be able to do things. And it's not that she didn't know how to do that before, but guess what? There was the issue of trust. And trust will cause you to not move forward on some things. But now that she's in a space where, because of the work that I've done with her, not only has she been able to trust herself more, she's been able to develop trust with the other people. Guess what? It's freed up her time to now be able to write a book. So she'll be writing a book and hopefully be published pretty soon.
Oh, I love that journey for her. Thank you so very much, Temple, for joining us. I'm going to link all of your information below if somebody would like to go ahead and book that initial training with you. But I really appreciate it. And if anybody has any further questions, we would love to see them in the chat below. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you to everyone that is listening. And I just appreciate having this opportunity to share with you. Feel free to hit us up if you have any questions. We'd be glad to hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.